One of the things I like to do is be a time traveler. All the what-if scenarios. What if Ace Frehley, Peter Criss, and Vinnie Vincent formed their own band in the 1980s called Lips, and they wore all their Kiss makeup? The possibilities of the aftermath of that is fascinating to me. Like, they came out with an album, right? And it's called Lips. And you got Ace back, Peter's back, they're together with Vinnie, where they both shred guitar, Peter's on the drums. And imagine if the Lips album came out in 1985, okay? This would be 2 years after Paul and Gene took their makeup off in Kiss, right? What would be the reaction of Paul and Gene? Obviously, without a doubt, Gene would sue them. But he would probably lose. Even though he probably will have the best lawyers, Paul and Gene did not own the Catman makeup and the Spaceman makeup at the time. Not completely, so Ace and Peter would be able to do something like this. The same thing goes for Vinnie, probably. Like, they don't own the makeup at that time period. Let's say they sue them and then fail, and then what? What do Paul and Gene do if they can't stop them from putting their makeup back on, and they already came out with the album Lips? There's two ideas here that just rush through my mind. And let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these two scenarios Paul and Gene would do if they couldn't get them to stop? Would they A, Paul and Gene and Eric put their makeup back on and give Bruce his new makeup design, and then it's like Kiss versus Kiss. The real Kiss, it's like half of the original Kiss and half of the other original Kiss are versing each other in this epic Kiss battle of the 80s, the mid-80s. That would be so amazing. The fan base is split. They can't decide which band they like better, Lips or Kiss. People are going to say, oh, like Paul and Gene are obviously going to say, oh, they're the imposter Kiss, and we're the real Kiss. But they're really not, because Peter and Ace are half of the original Kiss. So they're really not imposters. So, like, what the fuck are they going to say? They're just going to say they're going to make better music? Like, Paul and Gene are going to try to prove that they're better musicians than Peter and Ace, and they're not. Peter and Ace are equal to Paul and Gene in terms of talent. So that's A, right? Scenario A. Or is it scenario B? They talk to Ace and Peter and try to bring them back to Kiss, and then that's when the reunion happens in like 1985, 1986, instead of 1997 or 1996. Is that when the reunion happens? And they wouldn't want Vinnie to be part of it, so Vinnie would be gone by then. But what would have happened was they would have already came out with their first Lips album in 1985. Then 1 year later, they could have convinced Peter and Ace to join back into Kiss, and then the reunion happens. But if the reunion happens in 1986, now Ace and Peter have even more leverage than they ever did in 96. Now they could go back to being equal partners again, and then they would all feel better about everything. Is this the only way, conceivable way, the reunion could have been better for Kiss to return? History would have played out so differently. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the idea of the band Lips, versus Kiss. And what would Paul and Gene do? I mean, the possibilities are everywhere. And if Paul and Gene decided to do the reunion with Ace and Peter, I guess Eric Carr is now done in Kiss, and that would suck. That would be sad. I mean, Peter's my favorite band member of Kiss, so it would be fucked up, in my opinion, is if Paul and Gene convinced Ace to return to Kiss, and now they're all wearing makeup again, and then Peter doesn't return, and they have Eric be the drummer. But then that would just be the same lineup they already had in the early 80s, all over again. You would have to bring Peter with you. You can't just be like, no, you're not part of it. The whole idea of what they were doing with Lips would be like competing against Paul and Gene and their bullshit. Or, scenario C, Paul and Gene and Eric and Bruce, they just continue to not wear their makeup. And they'll say some shit in the press like, we're better musicians, so we're going to make better music than them anyway, regardless of their makeup designs. And then you're going to have a clash of the fans. the fans are going to say, oh, well, the makeup era is done, so they're trying to prove themselves as musicians without the makeup. And then all the other Kiss fans are going to say, yeah, but the makeup was one of the biggest reasons why we even fell in love with Kiss in the first place. So what Peter and Ace and Vinnie are doing is a lot cooler than what Paul and Gene are doing in the mid-'80s. So you're going to have this big clash between all the Kiss fandom. And it would be fucking crazy. It would be insane. It'd be one of the greatest stories in all of rock. Now, I do know, factually, I did hear that Ace was not allowed to record a new album until 1987 due to his contract with Paul and Gene or something like that. I don't know how the fuck that worked, but anyway, even if that's true, then the Lips album could have came out in 1987. I mean, big deal. It doesn't really change much in this scenario. I know that there's one thing that's probably unrealistic about the scenario is that Ace didn't like putting on his makeup. We learned that later on. He remarked that a lot during the reunion years, and even after he split from Kiss in the early 80s. He wasn't a fan of putting on the makeup all the time, and he found it annoying. Him in particular. The other three guys didn't really mind it, but Ace was bothered by constantly putting it on. In Ace's defense, there was a lot of work that was involved in putting on Ace's makeup anyway. There had to be all that silver, and it had to be very intricate. They all had to be, but still. I mean, I would argue that Peter's makeup is the most intricate of all four of the original Kiss members, but so Ace would probably not want to put his makeup back on. He wouldn't want to do that to form Lips. But if it would be a way to like stick it to Paul and Gene, then he gets together with Peter and Vinnie. Like maybe it could have happened like that. Then again, Ace was trying to prove himself by distancing himself from Paul and Gene and what Kiss was, and he was trying to prove that he can make it on his own, do his own solo career thing, and be successful at it, and he was, because Fraley's Comet was a great band, so he did do that, and with him without makeup, kind of also proves that to himself, that he doesn't need the makeup. Like, he wanted to prove that to himself as well. The same went with Paul and Gene. They wanted to prove to themselves that they didn't need the makeup to be great musicians. Then again, after you guys proved that shit already, time to go back to the makeup. And they took way too long to go back to the makeup, and it was very annoying. Because the makeup is what Kiss represents. It's not the only thing, but in the biggest sense, it is. Because that's what made Kiss amazing, was their costumes and the makeup. And the music, it was the whole thing, but that was like the most special thing was their makeup designs and their costumes and the fanfare and all that. So that was the cool factor that made Kiss cool to people, was their uniqueness to their image. They should have returned to their makeup way before 96. But still, think about it. 85, 86, 87, the band Lips is formed, and it's their way of really sticking it to Paul and Gene by calling it Lips instead of Kiss. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, Kiss Army. And please hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my uploads. And I'll see you all again next time.